Hello and welcome to Comic Dissection, the comic book club where we read comics together and examine them through an intersectional leftist lens. I'm your host, Reno Dino Valentino, greatest thing you ever seen-o, and with me, as always, the lovely Cecilia Rose,
whoop, whoop.
The paragon of virtue.
Aww.
At least comparatively.
About to say,
comparatively.
You're giving me titles I don't know if I can live up to.
Yeah, comparatively, you are the paragon of virtue.
The amount of...
I set the bar down here, so that wherever you are, you're over it.
I was going to say, the amount of smut I read would... I wonder what virtue it is where...
Well, as we will discuss in the 12, smut is not. Smut is not disvirtuous, in my humble opinion.
You know what? My AO3 bookmarks would dare to disagree with you.
There's also a robot in this book we're going to read that would dare to disagree with you, but we'll get there. And speaking on that, we are dissecting the 12. This was put out it started in spring of 2008 and ended up running. It's 12 issues, and then they had a little bonus issue they released later. So 13 in all. And
a lucky number.
It's a very lucky number. And it ended up getting produced later because there were delays and stuff, because the two people working on it ended up getting other projects, etc., etc. Those two people being J. Michael Straczynski. I'm 99% sure I'm pronouncing that right. Most famously known for Babylon 5, a show he did. Also did work on Spider-Man.
Oh,
and
cool.
One of my favorites, as you can see behind our computer, audience, you cannot see this.
I knew I recognized that name.
Yeah, but he did the Top Cal's Rising Stars, which is something we will definitely cover for this podcast at some point. Did you ever watch Heroes when it was on?
Yes, because it had Milo Ventimiglia in it, and I've had a crush on him since I was 16. So.
Neat. Rising Stars influenced Heroes in a lot of ways. Huh. So, J. Michael Straczynski, sort of minor comic book royalty. Not like a king, but probably a duke.
Very nice.
And then we have Chris Weston, who's done work before this on Fantastic Four and the Invisibles. And you might appreciate Lucifer. He did some art for Lucifer.
Aww.
Yeah.
All right.
So that is the folks bringing us the 12, which is kind of, I don't want to say, I guess homage is probably the best thing. It's kind of harpooning in a way.
When we get introduced to the characters, I literally wrote beside some of them, like, knockoff Captain America or Zorro, but less cool.
Here's something you'll find very interesting. Every one of these characters actually had a comic in the golden age of comics, which was 1938 to 1956. So these are all actual comic book people that were completely revamped and redone. Like, the stories have all been changed, the origins, all that's been
obviously.
redone.
Yeah.
Which is probably one of the reasons there's 11 guys and one girl, because these people were taken from the golden age of comics. And surprise, surprise, a lot of white fellas in the golden age of comics.
They all white, and there is only one girl.
Yeah. So I was writing, there's two ways you can redo characters from the past. And there's the redo, where you completely reimagine them. Or there's the revive, where you pull a Captain America and freeze them and then unfreeze them in modern times so they can just pick up where they left off. And this one kind of tried to do both. It reimagined the characters, but then placed them in the Golden Age.
Yep.
Which gave the writer a chance to, like I say, a look at the golden age of comics, its positives and negatives, through a unique viewpoint. Because he wasn't just taking characters that already existed there and just keeping them as they were. He's modifying them so that when he moves them into the modern day, 2008, when he moves them into the modern day of when this came out.
That's almost 20 years ago.
I know, right?
I hate time.
Mm-hmm. It just keeps doing the thing. But we'll talk more about the tropes of the golden age of comics before we get into this, because all of them will be examined here. Some not as well as I would like, and some I'm not really sure if there's enough of a judgmental eye on them as there should be.
Yeah.
Some of them are kind of like, wasn't this weird? Anyway, on with the show.
Let's keep marching.
Yeah, I think that might be because, again, this came out in 2008. It might be because it's hard to walk that line of paying homage to something that's really, really old, and then also being aware of all the problems that really, really old shit usually has.
It's like that thing where you can't go back and watch some of your favorite shows because when you do, you're like, oh, that's really transphobic. Mm-hmm. I thought that was funny 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. Oof, I should not have been a fan of it. Like, it hurts a little bit.
Well, even just from when I originally read this, like, I don't know, I picked this up 7-8 years ago and read it once, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And figured we would cover it for the show, because I was like, I remember it kind of talking a lot about Golden Age of Comics, which we haven't really discussed on the show yet. And then I gave it to you, and you gave it back, and you're like, oh, there's all this stuff in it. I'm like, I don't remember all that. I just remember there was a robot with no genitals and
Ken doll.
There was a Ken doll and a dude called the Phantom Reporter. That's literally all I remember from this.
The things that stick out to me most is the Nazi groping the blonde lady and
uncool Nazis.
Well, Nazis are bad.
For the first time ever, Nazis uncool. Like, that was uncool,
That is
Nazis.
going to be the front clip of this.
I like to say things that can be taken out of context and used against me in a court of law.
It's great. It's a great idea.
Can you believe it? The Nazis not acting cool.
Not the winners.
Sexist Nazis. I shudder to think.
They have such high opinions of women.
Yeah. They respect them as the pair of birth hips and sandwich makers that they were meant to be.
I wondered where you were going with that.
I didn't know. I start a sentence not knowing where it's going to end.
By the end as well? Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay.
So that stood out to you? Was I interrupted you? Is there anything else?
I forgot what I was going to say. No, the way they treat the one poor woman in this did stand out to me, yes.
You mean the demonic seductress?
Yeah, that femme fatale.
The femme fatale, which again, Golden Age of Comics. If you're going to have a woman in, she's got to be a femme fatale. She's got to be a dangerous woman of loose morals, or what is she even doing in this super
The dangerous
community?
Woman of loose morals that are doing
on the record,
stops.
My favorite women. Let me just say,
no, I love it.
Yeah.
All of my women crushes are women who could kill me very easily, and like, it's hot. Mm-hmm. I'm not denying that it's hot. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying that they could have done a better... And maybe it's just because it's supposed to be a flashback to Golden Age.
Yeah.
She's very one-dimensional, and like, outside of being a reward for the Phantom Reporter, serves very little purpose. And it's fucking irritating.
The worst part for me, and we'll get there in the issues, but the worst part was for me, was that they showed her with all these cool powers. And I was like, oh man, this girl's going to be a real threat when this goes down. Because right at the beginning, it's kind of established, and this is something else that's very Golden Age, that you're going to get these heroes together, they're going to end up fighting each other. Like, they're not going to be able to get along for whatever reason. And I was like, oh man, when that happens, whichever side she's on wins. Like, it's over.
Yeah.
And then when it ends up happening, when the fight goes down, she can't affect the person they're fighting because robot rules? I don't know. It bummed me out. I wanted to see a lot more Cthulhu tentacles from this than I saw.
It was very frustrating.
Yeah. But, so Golden Age Comics started in 1938 because Superman debuted in 1938 and went through the end of the 50s because they had in the 40s, of course, you had World War II, so a lot of comics were very propaganda, pro-army stuff, which I think they captured beautifully in this, but I'm not sure if they captured it ironically enough. It felt genuine sometimes, and maybe it is. Like, I don't know.
I also think
I don't
if
know
you're fighting the Nazis, like, that's a a little bit easier narratively to make a
so easy
grand. Yeah. It's not fucking Vietnam.
Yeah.
You know, like that's it's much more morally
black and white. It's many people consider it the only black and white war we've ever had.
'Cause they're Nazis.
It's like, have we had another black and white war? I don't know. Apparently not. Apparently it's just like, this one.
Something like fighting the Nazis who were the ones committing unspeakable evil acts. Mm-hmm. You cannot look at the Holocaust and be like, well, there's another side to this, surely. As opposed to something like Vietnam.
Let's hear what the other folks have to say.
Yeah, as opposed to something like Vietnam where, like, you get to watch, like, us commit unspeakable violent acts against people. Like, it is a much more simple. There's a reason why Captain America was on ice for 60 years, you know? Like, it is much easier to punch Hitler in the face and feel good about it. It's a lot harder to bomb a village full of small children and do that.
And speaking of Captain America, there's definitely, speaking of homages as well, Captain America is kind of the main centerpiece of all this Golden Age stuff, because Captain America's storyline, as he fights in World War II, he gets frozen, and then he pops up in modern day. And this is, all 12 of these characters go through the exact same thing. But you get a lot of, what if the person who got frozen in ice and then thawed out wasn't a Boy Scout who already was woke? Like, what if, what if he didn't just happen to already, think all the things that people in...
Have a decent barometer
in 2000,
humanity.
whatever, think. Yeah, what if that? And I like that. I thought that was something that Captain America didn't do enough of. Like, I would have liked to have seen, and this is probably silly, but I would have liked to have seen Captain America have to come around on thoughts. The Jewish problem, interracial marriage, like, I don't understand cross-dressing. Like, I would have liked to see Captain America get there, but not start there,
I actually kind of like that he starts there.
Yeah.
Because I feel like characters like Captain America, if he ever wasn't a paragon of virtue, it would be really easy to make him a Nazi. Because he's already, he's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed super soldier.
Yeah.
Like, it is, if you're not careful, I kind of feel like he has to start from a position of being...
morally incorruptible.
Yes.
I don't feel like I've ever seen it. I feel like all I've ever seen is either someone is just from the past and they're like, well, I still don't think black people and white people should get married, and I'm standing by that, and they become a bad guy. Or they're transported into modern times and they're just like, yeah, I don't see a problem with it. I never saw a problem with it. I used to fight for that shit back in the 50s. Like, I don't know. I would like to see an intellectual maturity, which comics don't often lead themselves to, because they have to stay they have to stay consistent, otherwise you don't have a comic.
Yeah.
Like we said during our Batman episode, like, if Batman ever figured out he could do more good as Bruce Wayne, you don't have a Batman comic anymore.
No, then you have Bruce Wayne running a whole bunch of orphanages and charities like that. You'd have a whole bunch of board meetings.
And not even recruiting Robin, so completely boring. Yeah. No, all right. You're right. But this was a good chance to do that, because these are heroes that never appeared again. They just popped up and did their thing. And like I said, I did some research about Golden Age of comics and stuff like that. But one thing I didn't get to and wanted to is Nick Fury and the Howling Commandos.
I did write a note about that.
In World War II, who somehow Nick Fury's still alive in 2023 and running S.H.I.E.L.D. And I don't know how Marvel explains that.
They don't. Nick Fury is just one of those weird, ageless,
grudgingly old man who just won't die.
He just won't die.
Yeah.
Maybe he just gets, his soul gets swapped into different bodies ever so often.
Soul swapping. That's how they get you.
It has to be something like that, because I swear they don't explain it. Nick Fury is just Logan, but...
It's true. Yeah.
Somehow worse? I don't...
Yeah, I don't understand it, and that's fine. So, without further ado, we'll talk a little more as we go about the different analogies and metaphors and similes that go back to the Golden Age. But it'll be easier to do within the comic and with actual examples. So, first of all, we open on issue 1 of the 12, and I like the way they oldened up the comic so it looks... They, like, curled up the cover so it looks like it's been sitting in someone's attic for a while. Like, it's got white around the corners. You know how a comic page will look when you've turned it a million times? And on the first issue, you have the 12. Like, the whole gang is here, standing, looking not cool, but looking Golden Age as fuck. Like,
yeah. And those short shorts. Gotta love that.
So popular.
I do not understand.
There was such a thing with short shorts for reasons I am so unclear on. We open on a full page spread, and you get a lot of the characters from the Golden Age, including Prince Namor, Captain America, Captain Britain, and believe it or not, a character named the Wizard, who was a real super speedy.
I had complicated feelings about that.
And Miss America, superhero, not the model. And those two had a fling. That was good for them. We'll find out later.
This I noted. The rat was trapped in a bunker on the
Wilhelmstrasse.
And the end was finally at hand. After reading Mouse, I have complicated feelings about Hitler being a rat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. Yeah, I didn't even catch that, but you're exactly right. You should have said the cat.
Well, it's just I think that and I understand the impulse because I do it too, but like there's a desire to make people who are evil monstrous and not human.
Yeah.
And I understand that impulse, but doing shit like that, like,
yeah,
Hitler was bad and Hitler was a person, and every person can be capable of that kind of shit. And
but when you're running a military campaign, that is how you get your your soldiers to shoot first and ask questions later.
It was something that I noticed when reading it, and it made me feel uncomfortable.
I think that's fair. And again, that's why you're the moral compass of the show. Even Hitler deserves to not be called a rat, darn it.
I think you have to wrestle with the fact that he was a man. I actually think that... So Behind the Bastards, right? They did that at that 4-parter on Joseph Mengele.
Yeah.
And he makes a point towards the end where he's talking about how in another world, Joseph Mengele would have just sold farming equipment.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's fucking terrifying. Like, who knows what kind of monsters just fucking work at Domino's. Like,
well, unfortunately, because we live in America, we often get to find out because they have access to anti-Semitic propaganda and guns, and so luckily those questions get answered.
Yay.
God bless America.
Don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
Right? Yeah. But you also get a couple of the sidekicks, because that was another thing the Golden Age of Comics begun, was there's me, but then there's a small little teenage version of me that you get to relate to. Yeah, that carried all the way into 80s comics. If you need proof of that, go back to listen to any of our 80s cartoon episodes.
Right.
Yeah, you get to see Bucky here.
I didn't clock that as Bucky until you started talking about sidekicks.
Yeah, that's Bucky. That's our Bucky boy. And
I think of Bucky as Sebastian Stan, which just clocks me as a normie who
follows
up
the
on
movies.
The movies.
Yeah. And the Human Torch, who interestingly enough in this was a robot, not the Human Torch from the Fantastic Four, who will come later.
Huh.
He also ended up with a little sidekick who had a weird name like Flamey or something. It was
why?
I do not know. But they're all going in. This is the quote unquote end of the war. They're charging through Germany. Pretty much every superhero in the world is here. And luckily, the Germans didn't have any. And it's interesting because the 12, the people who we're going to meet, end up kind of grouped together by mere luck and happenstance. There's a building. They're the 12 people closest to the building. They go in and start exploring said building. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to describe them real quickly because much like Nice House on the Lake, we got a big cast here. So I'm going to read the description of the cast right out of this because that will be the easiest. There was Mr. E, who I never saw demonstrate any actual powers. I think it was mainly about the look.
Yeah, he's a knockoff Zorro.
Yeah, well, Mr. E, there's a more knockoff Zorro called the Blue Blade.
Well, I actually clocked him as like a Shakespeare wannabe.
He's a knockoff Musketeer.
Yes.
Or not.
Yes.
Yeah,
because this is a Zorro costume. I don't care what you say.
That's
this
true.
This is a Zorro costume.
It's fair enough, yeah. Considers himself an instrument of justice. But yeah, just a guy with guns, which, again, Golden Age of comics, a lot of people did not need super outfits. Or they needed outfits. They did not need superpowers. Everyone considers Batman the first. He wasn't the first person who just put on a costume and became a hero. Like, even on the old radio serials, you had the Shadow. Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of man? The Shadow knows. That was just the dude in a Zorro costume with a red scarf. Which is why it's very funny. The Phantom Reporter, who looks very similar to Mr. E, is like, oh, it sucks when someone wears the same outfit as you to a party.
Yep.
The suit with the fedora and the domino mask, it was such a common. So many heroes. The most famous being the Spectre, probably. But so many heroes at the time wore that exact outfit.
Suit, fedora, domino mask.
Yeah, and a cape often. Yeah, and a cape for reasons that, I don't know, superhero. They were still figuring it out. And then we have Mr. Mine Excello.
The knockoff Doctor Strange.
Yep. Word in the trenches was that in addition to being massively strong, his senses were extraordinarily sharp. He could see halfway to the moon and hear a pin drop a mile away. Perfect guy to have on point in enemy terrain. Most of all, he was able to visualize where he was destined to be at any moment. Not where he wanted to be necessarily, but where he was fated to be. I fucking love that. Like, that is
a nice power.
That is a very cool twist on the Doctor Strange.
Yep.
Yeah, bit. And then we have Rockman, who was supposed to be the ultra-strong, big-shot leader of a secret race of people who lived underground. At least that's what he said, as far as I could see what he believed. Nobody ever really knew if that was true or not.
Rockman was my surprising fan favorite. I'm not gonna lie.
Rockman was cool.
He was. Well, I don't usually go for the himbos. I don't usually go for the himbos. Like all brain or all brawn, no brain aren't usually my favorite characters. But I actually really liked Rockman.
He was a himbo with heart.
That must be what it is.
Probably Mastermind was my guy, but yeah.
I liked Rockman.
The creepy smart guy, as usual. I'm a one-trick pony over here. Black Widow and Captain Wonder couldn't have been more different. On a bet, Captain Wonder was straight up middle class, honorable, and massively strong. Rumor was he had a wife and kids back home. As for the Widow, word was that she'd made some kind of pact with the devil himself, giving her all kinds of dark powers, including the ability to kill with a touch. We have our Scarlet Witch ripoff.
Yeah.
Has appeared. All I know is there were a lot of GIs and other guys who were prepared to take that chance. Because...
Men are gross.
Well, but I was going to say because you had to be a looker or you weren't allowed to be a superhero. And especially not a female superhero.
Yeah, I was going to say that's only a rule for the women.
I don't know. These are some good-looking gentlemen here. Not all of them. The
his
witness...
eyebrows...
I love his supervillain eyebrows. I love his eyebrows.
His eyebrows are gross.
You know what? I think his eyebrows were literally... Number one, it's Golden Age villain to have the triangle eyebrows. That is a very common, like, the bad guys. And I really think it was a red herring. You give this guy the bad guy eyebrows from the Golden Age, and he becomes like a prime suspect for no other reason than he's got them bad eyebrows. Like, if you see someone with a unibrow, you're like, I don't trust that guy. Yeah.
You're talking about people...
I think he is you know what? I think he is attractive. There, I said it.
It took you a minute.
He's a good looking.
That you have bad taste.
Well, I was gonna say despite the eyebrows, but I think the eyebrows add to it. So, very cute. While they're walking through here, on the wall, there's all these like paintings.
Yep.
Yeah, there's one of Hitler. But you also have the leader of Hydra. You have Baron Zemo. And you have Baron Blood, who was a vampire bat Nazi. And so, again, the golden age.
Okay.
Vampire bat Nazis, deal with it.
I have a headache.
Yeah. Blue Blade and Laughing Mask were what some of the heroes with real powers called tourists. Show-offs would be more like it without real powers. Guys like that were just in it for the press and the babes. Yeah, okay, Laughing Boy was as good with those 45s as Blade was with that sword, but still. So, they are skilled, but because they don't have powers, the rest of the people are a bit judgmental of them. Which I think carries through to modern comics.
Yep.
I think a lot of Batman in the JLA being such a fucking edgelord is that he's constantly like... I think there is a little bit of insecurity there because he's just a man. And Superman and Green Lantern and Wonder Woman all have these amazing powers. The Fiery Mask, however, he was big time lethal. By one report, he'd wiped out an entire company of Nazis by willing a firestorm to appear around them. You could hear the screaming for half a mile away. As for the Witness, he didn't have any powers, just his fist. But he could remember every evil act he'd ever seen and had sworn to avenge them all.
I want his powers.
Oh, God. I don't.
I think it would be a burden to bear, but if I actually got to do something about it, I think it would be worth it.
You would have to do something. Like, this is so cruel. Like, when you get his origin story, basically he dies, and, like, the Angel of Vengeance is like, yeah, I'll send you back to Earth, and I'll give you this power. But the power is like, you know about horrible things that are happening. You don't have any powers to, like, stop it. You've just got to learn how to fight and get gun training or whatever. Like, that seems really unfair to me.
I mean, yes.
Especially when you compare it to Black Widow, who also made a pact
with the devil.
And got a ton of power.
She did.
This guy got the power to, like, see the problem. Like, Black Widow got that and more. Like, she also got the power to solve the fucking problem with...
I honestly...
gore explosions.
Her power is also very nice. I'm not gonna lie. Mm-hmm. If I could make a pact with the devil and then run around and destroy powerful men, I would do it.
Well, there goes the big question. No, I'm just kidding.
I'd fucking do it in a heartbeat.
But the Witness, it says, on the way, he said he had just come from seeing a place called Auschwitz. No powers. But not one of us could look him in the eye without feeling like we'd peered into something dark and angry and very, very dangerous. So the Witness is a very interesting character because he carries his tragedy on his sleeve, and he's more motivated than any of the other characters because, like, it sits with him. Because a loving God gave him guilt, the superpower.
Maybe that's why I identify with it so much.
But the one that unnerved me the most was Electro, because he wasn't human, wasn't even alive. He was some kind of robot, created and controlled by a guy halfway around the world. You could see the image of the guy in Electro's faceplate. The two were in constant mental contact. Something about that arrangement just creeped me out in a big way.
Electro, because Cyborg was taken by DC.
Yes. Right? Yeah, and also a 1940s version of I like that that's the one that creeps him out the most. Mm-hmm. Because nowadays, we would think nothing. Like, we have drones, we have robots controlled by people far away, and we think nothing of it. So it's very much a mindset of, 1940s, that this guy is most freaked out by the robot, not the person who made a pact with the devil.
No, he wants to have sex with her, so she's fine.
Yeah, fine as fuck. Yeah, he is definitely a one-track mind.
Yeah,
fella.
It's fucking annoying.
He is your typical gumshoe.
He's that dude who thinks that because he's nice to a woman, that woman should have sex with him, and then it's rewarded.
I mean, we'll get there, but I'm not sure he expected that. He seemed a lot more like I'm going to shoot my shot because we live in the same house and she's right next door, and we're the only people from the 1940s still alive today. And I'm going to keep shooting my shot because I'm a hard shoe gumshoe who's never,
I was not impressed.
No, I'm not saying you should be impressed. I'm saying he strikes me as the typical, like, what's the reporter who's, there's a word I'm looking for. But anyway, the reporter who is just nose to the grindstone all the time, and he's like a dog with a bone. Once he gets on a story, he like can't let it go till he gets the answer, like that kind of trope. And apparently he also applies it to women that he's trying to sleep with, for better or worse. In this case, for better, because it totally works out for him. And again, she is a girl also with a 1940s mindset, so
she could have done better.
She probably could have, but doesn't get the option because, again, 1940s. Finally, there was me, Dick Jones, also known as the Phantom Reporter. And yeah, I guess I'm one of those types the super guys would call a tourist. No powers. A good boxer, not too bad in the looks department. Not afraid of much, but still, no powers. I did my part back home before Pearl Harbor, but when the war started, I had to do something. So, anyway, suffice it to say, I was way out of my league with some of these guys. So, Mastermind is leading them to where they need to be with his power. And it turns out where they need to be is in the middle of a trap. So they go into this room, a door shuts behind them, which immediately turns off Electro.
Poor robot.
He's cut off from the guy that controls him. And then they're like, okay, we're going to fight you guys.
That's some pretty good Wi-Fi for the 40s, though.
It's amazing Wi-Fi for the 40s. And before they can really do anything, the Nazis appear. And the Nazis gas their asses. And, man, these 12 heroes of varied amounts of superpowers are just taken out. No problem.
You didn't introduce Dynamic Man.
Oh, I forgot about Dynamic Man.
They don't actually call him that at first. They just call him Kurt. And I just remember
Kurt the asshole.
Yeah, Kurt is an asshole who has a problem with, who likes to call people pansies and like...
Yeah, he uses all sorts of slurs and seems pretty cool with it because he is kind of the answer to your question. Like, what if it'd be very easy for Captain America to become a dictator? Mm-hmm. He has those vibes. But yeah, I forgot about him. Jeez. So that is our 12. See, that's what I'm saying. There's a lot of these guys. And they all get knocked out with this gas. So just like that, the 12 are taken out. Right at the end, Rockman starts beating on the floor. He's like, my people will hear me and come for me. They will come. Boom, 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 boom. He's like pounding on the ground. But passes out, as does everyone. So the Nazis' plan is to strap these people into these tubes. It's like cryogenic freeze chambers. Think Mr. Freeze's wife, Nora. And leave them there and come back for them later once the heat's died down. Like they robbed a bank and they think in a week or two the fuzz will get off their case and they can come back and claim these guys. And
this is the panel where the Nazi gropes the woman. So that's great. I love that.
For such men as ourselves, there's always a next time. Which, unfortunately, has not proved to be a lie.
You gotta love it when the Nazis are right.
It's always a good sign. When you look to what makes a country great, you're like, are the Nazis turning out to be right about all the horrible stuff that they said they were going to do, and now they're actually doing? Okay, great.
Love that for us.
We're moving in the right direction. And I like this. The next part, they were like, oh, but what the Germans didn't count on was that it wasn't the Americans who were going to take over this city. It was going to be the Russians.
Russians running in to save the day.
Not as forgiving. And believe me, when it came to getting revenge, the Russians weren't known for letting their attention waver. Most of the team of scientists were killed trying to escape Germany, while others were sent off to work camps and gulags. The SS officers in charge of the mission were introduced to wire hangers and a tradition Russian soldiers called dancing on air, aka getting hung. And let me say this, I do not know if the Russians did like America and took some of the German scientists and made them like work on...
Part of NASA?
Yeah, part of NASA. Made them work on stuff. But if they didn't, good on them. They've got a higher moral standing than us. Because, man... one of the reasons we left that easily discernible black and white and got into that moral gray area is after the war, we decided that any of the Nazis that had stuff America could use deserved a pardon. And we're allowed to go free and teach things. Ugh.
Gotta love that.
Gotta love it. So, we flash to present day, or Wednesday, August 2nd, 2008. And they're digging... They're going to build a new hotel, and they're digging in this one area. And surprise, surprise, that area is where these people had been cryogenically frozen.
Yep.
And they decide, we need to wake these folks up. Which they do. And they call the Americans, because this was an American contingency that got frozen up in here. And this guy, the general, is kind of... talking to one of his underlings, and he's like, well, are we gonna unfreeze them? Now, I should mention that this is happening during the Civil War.
I was gonna ask, because like he says something, and I asked if that was a Civil War reference by Colonel Dumbshit.
In case you missed it, Lieutenant, we had a freaking war last year between the Capes and the Mask over the Superhuman Registration Act. Damn near tore the whole country apart. So this is right after Civil War, I would say.
Okay.
And... basically, the general says, we want to unfreeze these because these are heroes back when heroes were heroes. And what he means by that, and he says it very clearly, there's no ambiguity here. These people are going to obey the government.
These people are from a time when the United States was the unquestioned good guy, when patriotism was something to be applauded, not mocked in the press. And I want to point out that there's probably a reason that attitude changed.
Now, you're not implying that America did something to deserve the changing of patriotism to derision, are you? Because I find that offensive
be offended
as a pure-blooded American soul. I find that highly offensive.
I do also want to point out back on this other page.
Yeah.
When they're talking about opening the chambers or whatever. Yeah. He says, dynamic man, you're kidding. Who thinks of these names? And as much as I hate to have something in common with a military officer, even fictionally.
You wrote it a few pages earlier, didn't you?
What's up with these names? Why?
They are the names
and wait
from the
until
Golden
you get to
Age.
their real names.
Yeah.
Wait till you get to their real names.
Oh.
Black Widow's real name still makes me mad.
But again, you can't do Golden Age of Comics without a pun name. And...
she doesn't get anything. They couldn't give her a halfway decent name.
They gave her a pun name. Someone had to take the pun name bullet, and it was this poor lady who couldn't defend herself. So they unthaw our heroes, and they put them in a 1940s style hospital. They're trying to...
Captain America.
Yeah, just very similar to Captain America. They're trying to ease them back into modern day. This is weird because they tried this with Captain America and it didn't work so
Maybe
well.
they thought they'd get it better the second time.
Yeah, but the Phantom Detective, and this I've said this 3 or 4 times during the history of this podcast. I'm a sucker for where the guy's just noticing different things and detective working it together. Mm-hmm. And the Phantom Detective immediately realizes that this is all bullshit. He's like, well, the radio doesn't have commercial. The girls' stockings don't have garter belts to hold them up. Like, he's like, wait, tech has
She's got ear piercings.
And she's got a lot of ear piercings, which is not something that he is familiar with. So he walks down the hall and finds the strongest person that he trusts. And Captain Wonder. And he's like, Captain Wonder, I need you to know some things. I think this is all bullshit, and I need you to get outside and figure out what the hell is going on. And meanwhile, I'm going to get some change to make a phone call.
Yeah, they're talking about a payphone, and I wrote down dollars to donuts. That payphone don't work.
It's got to be for show. Although maybe not in 2008. Maybe payphones hadn't completely stopped existing in 2008.
I feel like I have never used a payphone in the entirety of my life, and I'm 32. So.
Well, in the 90s, I definitely did.
I've had a cell phone since high school.
Yeah. So, Captain Wonder, who can fly, just flies out and has super strength. He's Superman type. He just flies out of the building. And at the same time, the Phantom Stranger is taking some change so he can use the phone. And he sees the date on the money. Mm-hmm. And he's like, oh my God, it's 2008. Right at the same time, Captain Wonder busts out of the roof. And it is revealed that it's 2008. Mm-hmm. And they're both, dear God, it can't be. So now the cat's out of the bag, so Uncle Sam sits him down. Not the superhero Uncle Sam, a general of the army.
Is there a superhero?
Yes, another dressed just like Uncle Sam. Was actually a DC comic hero and was the leader of the Justice Society of America, which was the precursor to the Justice League of America. So before the Justice League existed with the heroes you recognize, the Batmans, Wonder Woman, Supermans, there was the Justice Society, which had Uncle Sam. It had Dr. Midnight. It had a different Green Lantern who actually had his powers from magic and couldn't affect things that were wood.
Oh, he's got something in common with Doctor Who.
Yeah, and he got beat up by Solomon Grundy a lot. So they sit him down to talk and basically give him the spiel, like, hey, we're going to give you a place to stay. We're going to give you a year to get back on your feet. They're going to give you a mansion. Mm-hmm. And by the way, if you continue to work for the government, you can stay in that mansion forever. And if you don't, after a year, we're kicking you off the payroll and good luck in your future endeavors. And everyone kind of agrees because...
What else are you going to do?
Yeah, you woke up and it's 2008.
I mean, yeah.
It's not like you had an itinerary. Like, well, I had tickets to the theater this Sunday. Like, yeah, they got nothing else to do. They need a mission in life to give them direction.
Well, they get a year, so even if they decide not to do it, it's worth just getting your bearings and going to Professor Xavier's knockoff mansion.
Yeah, a free place to stay for a year. Yeah. I called it the superhero real world. What happens when you get 12 people to live in a house and things stop getting polite and start getting real?
What the fuck?
Right? Right? It's the real world superhero edition.
Jesus. Well, you're not wrong.
Yeah. So the last panel of issue 1 says, much, much later. And it shows the Phantom Stranger standing over the Blue Blade with his gun out. And Blue Blade lying there dead. And it says, funny, isn't it? What a difference a little time can make. And so, yeah. Issue 1, what's going on?
Yeah.
And we fly into issue 2. So the covers of each of these are made to look like the pulp comics from the 1940s and 50s. And each one stars a different member of the 12. This one's Captain Wonder Strikes for Freedom, a book-length thriller. So each one has a description like that with one of the characters. And I dig it. I'm a big sucker for that. So it opens in the much, much later, where, let's face it, none of us liked Roy Chambers, a.k.a. the Blue Blade. Or as he liked to announce it, the Blue Blade! I imagine him saying it like that every time.
No, it sounds wrote, too. You're not wrong.
Yeah, all capital, heavy font.
Yeah, I just probably would have shoved him off a cliff.
Yeah, well, someone did. Someone did that exact thing. And we cut to the flashback of earlier in 2008, and Blue Blade's basically saying, hey, I want to be famous over here. I'm a celebrity, basically. Might
as well cash into this.
Yeah, I got into this gig to be a celebrity. Now it's 2008. I'm even a rare commodity because it's just me, Captain America, and you losers, right? Like, we're the only ones.
Honestly, because he says the whole reason why he went into fighting the Nazis was to get an acting career out of it. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give him this. I don't care why you're fighting the Nazis. If you're fighting the Nazis, I'm fine.
Oh, yeah.
With it. Like,
yeah, I don't care.
Your motivation be damned.
I don't care. Now, this might just be me being a woke snowflake, but I don't care what your motivation is. I don't care what outfit you wear.
Nope.
If you're fighting zombies, do it dressed like a musketeer. Do it in an evening gown. Like, I do not care.
Those short ass booty shorts half these people be wearing.
Yeah, if you got legs like that, show them off. Kill some Nazis.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah. So he's talking about I mean, that's what the war was all about, right? To create the world of the future, an American future, a shining light upon a hill, a new world, a perfect world. While he's saying all this, the dynamic man is looking out the window and seeing...
a not perfect world, one would argue?
A group of homeless people, basically. And he's talking... And then I think it's Rockman asking, where's the rocket packs? I thought we were going to have rocket packs. Which is the most common joke of, like...
Yeah,
of
flying
the future.
cars.
Yeah.
Where are the flying cars? And then, so this is just...
Mm-hmm.
I point out, and I'm going to continue to point out how many times I think the Phantom Reporter's a creep.
Yeah.
So we got a nice little panel of the blonde girl...
Suffering.
And he just says, beautiful, so beautiful. I hate this dude.
Yeah, he is definitely not... Doesn't like her for her mind.
He knows nothing about her.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that continues on.
Yeah, that doesn't
until he
change.
points a gun in her face.
Yeah, that's how you learn about people. You just threaten them with a gun until you get their backstory. Weirdly enough, in superhero world, that is how you learn about people. Like, I feel like that's pretty much how Gambit won over Rogue. I think that's pretty much how... Anytime you have a superhero guy and a superhero girl... Mm-hmm. They always bond through violence. Either beating up each other or together beating up a third party. Like
I'm okay with bonding through violence for superheroes. Don't do this in real life.
Yeah. Like, I don't think Gambit was into Rogue for her mind in the first 750,000 times he hit on her. I think that definitely came later.
Maybe been spoiled by cartoons and fan fictions. Mm-hmm. But I'm just not impressed with this.
Oh, I don't think this story, the romance in this story is unearned completely. Like, I am with you 1,000%. But I also think it is very Golden Age typical. And again, this is one of those instances where I was talking about earlier where I don't know if it's harpooning that Golden Age thing or if Michael was like, but yeah, I'm also going to write a romance in there. And I'm just going to do it real quick.
We're just going to shoehorn this in.
Yeah, I'm like... Honestly, you didn't need a romance in this. You've already got 12 characters doing all sorts of crazy-ass shit.
Yeah, this was not necessary.
It was unnecessary. I think it would have been a much cooler story if Phantom Stranger hit on her, and the last thing was when she told him, like, it's probably not safe for you to do that. And then, that's it.
She could have had her goth girlfriends in the little underground bar.
Well, I think they both should have just ended up alone, but... I think she should have ended up killing that girl by accident, and it'd been horrible and not heartbreaking. So the general comes in, explains their situation. He's like, hey, everybody, you got a year, blah, blah. Well, what I said for issue 1 actually happens here, issue 2. Also tells, what's his face?
Captain Wonder.
Yeah, Captain Wonder.
Or Captain Wonder.
Yeah, Captain Wonder. Hey, I know where your wife and kids are buried if you want to go visit them. I would take a few days. And he's like, hell no. He flies, takes off. He's gone.
Poor guy.
Yeah, I feel bad for a lot of these characters. Like, it is rough. And this is something I don't feel Captain America touched on enough, is the trauma of getting transported this far in the future. Like, Captain America has little moments of it, but... Well,
like you said before, this is definitely much more of a what if more realistic, less well-adjusted people were given... Because, like... This is, Captain, I would argue, Mr. Wonder here, never recovers from this.
No, you are correct. He does not.
There's no point wherein which he's good.
Yeah.
Whereas, Cap misses, Peggy and shit.
Yeah, but he moves on.
But he continues with life.
He finds new purpose.
Yes.
Yeah. It can be argued that Mr. Wonderful here never does.
No, I do not think he ever does.
But he's like, yeah, I'm going to go. I'll be back later. Dynamic Man is like, hey, you want me? You got me. I'm already in. Let's do this. Rah. He's very gung-ho. He wants to get back to work as soon as possible.
Yep.
And Phantom Reporter, who, by the way, this whole story is told from his point of view, which is kind of a mistake. I think he's one of the more boring characters. I would have liked to have seen it much like The Nice House on the Lake, where each issue was told from the point of view of a different character. Yeah. You would have got a lot more in-depth things from Black Widow, from Laughing Mask, from Fiery Mask, from all the masks. Everyone, if you'd had more of a point of view changing. But I get it. He's the detective. He's the one trying to get the bottom of the mystery. So it's easiest. The easiest storytelling device is to have the gumshoe tell the story because they're the inquisitive one. But he's walking around feeling sorry for himself, basically.
He's very whiny.
He's
a very whiny
He is
character.
emo.
No. I am the resident emo here, and I will tell you, as an emo person, this is not emo. He's just irritating.
I think this is the dark side of emo. This is the mopey, annoying side of emo. You can't deny emo is not all the positives that emo is. It is also the negatives. Same for punk. Same for grunge.
He is not allowed in the club.
I don't know how you'll keep him out.
I will simply put a pretty mannequin in the front.
Especially not now that he's got a goth girlfriend. He is emo. He is so emo.
I will put a pretty mannequin in the front, and he'll just talk at it for a few hours and tire himself out.
Speaking of, like... we'll talk about it in a minute. But yeah, speaking of talking to mannequins, like a lot of people treat Electro, who is our robot with no body, as kind of either a confessional / therapist, because the robot still has no body connected to it. But they took it, they're storing it in like a shed at this mansion, because they're like, gotta keep the 12 together.
For some reason.
Different characters will come out and just kind of chat with it.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is not therapy. I know you guys don't know therapy because you're from the 40s, but this ain't it. Talking to a wall with a face is not therapy.
Yeah.
But
you're right.
He goes by Mastermind, and Mastermind's like, man, it's so loud here. Because he's basically got the Superman problem of he can hear everything, like even the sound waves and the radio waves and stuff. And he's like, I can get the hell out of here. This place is too loud. And he can't tell his destiny. He can't tell what he's supposed to be doing and what he's supposed to be telling his friends to do. Because even though he's very aloof, he does care about the 12. Like, yeah. And that's my character. I like the people who care about the other characters, but never tell them directly. Because that's healthy. That's how we do things healthy.
Mm-hmm. You should always keep it a secret when you like people. That way, you gotta
never tell your friends you love them.
You gotta hold on tight to it and then bury it real deep.
If your friends know that you love them, they will leave you. Never tell your friends you care. Anyway, so fan reporter.
We are well-adjusted people.
We're well-adjusted people. He walks by Black Widow's room and basically says, "Hey, this is hard on everybody, but you know." Maybe don't isolate yourself in your room. In the end, maybe it's a good thing. It's a fresh start, a chance to wipe slate clean. Like, he gives her the most banal of pep talks. And surprisingly, it does not work. Because it is the most banal of pep talks. And she's like, you don't know my situation. It does not. What you're saying does not work for me. I have the demon didn't forget while I was asleep that I owe him everything. And apparently just grin and bear it was not going to save me.
It's like when you're depressed and someone's like, just think about something else.
Go for a jog. Cheer up.
It'll be okay.
Do something you like. Make it into a smaller list of things. Like, oh my God. Like, we don't... Like... don't tell depressed people that. Like, they didn't think of cheering up. Like, oh, Jesus, why did I think of that?
Why are you worried about that? Just don't think about it.
Yeah.
I'll add that to the list.
My superpower is not thinking about things when I don't want to.
There's a line in here somewhere where he says something about, I think he's talking about the dynamic man being immune to introspection and self-reflection.
I have a note about that.
I'm like, I want that superpower. That is the superpower. How do you pull that one off?
Yeah. That is a fucking superpower from hell. So, we have the sad scene. The very
Wonder.
sad scene of Wonder showing up at the graves of his children. And they say, your kids were killed in somewhere called Vietnam.
Yeah.
Because during World War II, Vietnam was not even a blip on anyone's radar. And, oh man, on Caroline, his wife's gravestone, it says, "Come the darkness, I still believe." And I'm like, that's what I want on my tombstone. That is it. I don't know. I thought that was really sweet. But it's also heartbreaking because she wrote that on her tombstone because he said he would come back. Mm-hmm. And she probably probably when she was dying was like, I want this on my tombstone as a guilt trip for when my husband finally comes back. to rub his face in it.
We get this little flashback of him talking about going to the war
Yeah.
and how he promises to come home.
Yeah, I'll come home. Of course I will.
He
Why
just
wouldn't
comes
I?
home entirely too late.
Yeah.
So that's great. Love
And
that.
it's just this beautiful full-page spread of him, like, curled up on the graveside. I'm sorry,
poor
honey.
guy.
I'm sorry I came home so late. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Ooh, yeah. Then we get a little bit of Phantom Reporter's plot.
Phantom Detective.
Phantom Detective, Phantom Reporter, Phantom guy.
All of these are names that they didn't call Batman.
Yeah. Yeah, all these Batman, like, pre-names. Although the Phantom, again, that's an actual superhero that existed. He used to be a reporter, but sometimes the cops couldn't get enough evidence, so he got the evidence and shot people and solved crimes. And then when World War II started, he wanted to do his part, so he
started shooting Nazis.
He started shooting Nazis, God bless him. I mean, you know, I don't like the way you hit on Black Widow, but for every Nazi you kill, I'm giving you a pass. So just keep them bullets flying, my friend.
Look, he has bad flirting practices.
He contains multitudes, this guy.
Apparently.
Not really. He'd be a much better character if he contained multitudes.
He really would.
So, again, feeling bad for himself, he walks out, and they're delivering Electro, the robot man. Dynamic Man shows up and
Carries Electro
easily after the Phantom Detective tries to help. I'm going to call him Detective half the time. Phantom Reporter tries to help, and they're like, no, we got it. Dynamic Man comes in, and man is a total shitbird. He straight up says to Phantom, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be a lot harder for you, Dennis and Vince, to find a place in this new world because you don't have any actual powers to bring to the table. But I'm sure you'll figure something out. Or not, and then flies away. And like, they are not hiding that Dynamic Man is a total asshole.
He's just a dick.
Such a dick. So they open it up and you get to see Electro, which Phantom is still, after all these years, kind of unnerved by. Yeah. And now he's a piece of useless equipment. We go to Dynamic Man, flying around, saving people, doing the Lord's work out there. But then there's a very strange thing that happens.
Mm-hmm.
A lady is like, help thief. And he sees a woman and an African-American in front of her running. So he swoops down and grabs the black man and gets ready to knock his lights out. And she says, what are you doing? Put him down. That's my husband. He was chasing the guy who stole my purse. Put him down. And he looks and he says, your husband? ? And the look on his face
is, every old white man.
I gotta give Chris credit here. He perfectly captured
every old white man's look of disgust at an interracial couple.
Yeah.
Every like that weird, like, scrunched up, like, where their lips disappear and, like,
yeah,
his eyes,
their
and his
nose gets like 40 extra wrinkles.
Yeah, that, like, it's. I wrote down, it's super cool that he's racist. That's awesome. Love that for us.
I mean, let's say this: he wears his racist heart on his sleeve
because he drops them and is like, "I got better shit to do."
Yeah. We've been watching him stop robberies and do all this stuff, but all of a sudden he has better things to do with his time.
Yep.
So, not even. It's real obvious.
We never said what their names actually are. So,
their real names.
Black Widow.
I've got them all writ.
Black Widow is named Clairvoyant, and I will never not be mad about it.
It's Clairvoyant, not clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant.
You are making it sound like it is a pun on clairvoyant.
I will kick you. I will kick you.
It's clairvoyant. Honestly, none of the rest of the names matter because they only did the pun with one of them, which bums me out because, again...
I might have burnt this book if they were all puns.
I would have fucking... It would have brought this book. I probably would give a 7. I would bump it up to a 9 if everyone had pun names.
No.
So Cecilia brings this up because we are now looking at Black Widow, who is basically telling the demon that's made this pact with her Yes, I remember our pact. I know it's still on.
I love how they
belong
just
to
have
you.
her butt cheek hanging out here.
Yeah,
That's
well,
cool.
yeah, you gotta show like the corners of the butt cheek if you're a female superhero during the 40s. It's just one of the rules. And then we have
These
our
rules are very gratifying
It's
to
very.
men.
It's weird. It's like these comics were made with only one of the sexes in mind. I mean, I doubt that would have been ridiculous. You're cutting off yourself at the knees and losing out on a lot of money. So that's obviously not what happened. But that's what it seems like
Yeah,
happened.
it's an interesting thing, isn't it?
It's weird. I don't understand it. So the Phantom is sitting there, just thinking. And all of a sudden, Rockman comes down the stairs pulling his mattress behind him. And basically, he says, I need to sleep closer to the earth because my people will be looking for me. And I want to be somewhere they can find me.
I really like him.
Yeah, there's a very sad scene of him in the basement with the mattress on the floor and him just like looking at the mattress. And the Phantom is going back up the stairs. He's like, poor bastard. And that's fair because we see him beating on the floor the same way he was before he got frozen, trying to get a signal, trying to hear a signal. It's like all the movies where the aliens trapped on Earth and they keep sending signals up to space trying to get home to notice them.
He just wants to go back to his family.
Yeah, like Jesus Christ, let this guy go back to his family. Issue 3, cover Born of the Flame, the fiery mask turns up the heat, a scorching action novel. At least they still put the puns in the covers.
I actually skipped all the covers, so
Oh man,
I'm fine with it.
you shouldn't. There's some
I'm fine.
very nice
I'm
art
fine.
there.
I looked at them, but
You didn't read the descriptors?
I did not.
Okay.
Like, this is cool. Keep turning the page.
Yeah. And this is what you were talking about, and the first note I have for issue 3 is Phantom Reporter has Dynamic Man pegged. So the first page is Dynamic Man carrying a plane on fire to the earth. It says, he's talking about how they're all having trouble adjusting, but not Dynamic Man. I suspect in the case of Dynamic Man, it has more to do with a lack of self-reflection than actual resiliency. Just keep moving, keep smiling, so you don't actually have to think about where you are, what you're doing, or who you are. So in the end, maybe there is something to be said for living the unexamined life.
There's a song, going back to Wicked, and another nice little musical reference. There's a song in that where one of the characters talks about dancing through life.
Yeah.
And that is, one of the lines is
The
like
unexamined life?
Yeah, it talks about he sings about having an unexamined life.
Yeah, I think that's a fair. So, and it's true. Like, at first glance, Dynamic Man is doing what the other ones can't.
Yep.
Like, he's just adjusted. He's already back in it. He's doing good works as long as you are the right sexuality and color. He is out there doing good, and everyone else is fucking struggling.
Yes.
And Phantom's just thinking about all the different problems people are having.
Earl here needs one of those chambers that doesn't let any sound or noise or color in.
Yeah, he ends up getting a whole house of that.
Yep, he does.
Yeah, but Mastermind is like, I gotta get the hell out of here. This place is freaking me out. And the 12 are kind of starting to split. He's talking about leaving because he's too close to the city and he's getting all this interference and he can't think. Also, we have Mr. E, Victor J is his real name. He has some surviving family, so he's going to meet his family, which is pretty exciting. Imagine, finding out that your family is still alive. None of these other people got that.
Too bad that doesn't make anything better.
It works out for him. Great. We'll see in just a few pages. And
this is where dude's hyperfixation on Claire started getting on my nerves.
Phantom's talking to Black Widow again, and Black Widow lets it be known that she does not sleep. And he's trying to offer her coffee, and she's a weird question. He's like, so I laid out breakfast, I can heat some coffee for you. And she's like, thank you. And he's like, what's that? Thank you, I don't need any coffee warmed up, or thank you, I accept your gracious offer. And she says, it is what you choose to make of it. He's like, well, I want to keep hanging out with you, so I'm going to go make some coffee.
Yeah, you're going to follow her like a puppy.
And she's like, as you wish. I'm used to lap dogs. And I follow her out the door, the way a man tired of his life walks into the arms of the sea, thinking even as he sinks, beautiful, so beautiful.
I swear.
So yeah, I don't think he thinks if I'm nice enough to her, she'll like me. From that line, I think he thinks I'm going to throw myself up against this wall until it or her kills me.
I wish she'd have killed him.
It would have been a neat twist, wouldn't it? So we get Mr. E showing up to a house, and the name is Goldstein, and his son is there. And his son says, hey, your wife's upstairs. Go up, spend some time with her. And then we get the reveal that Mr. E was a Jewish man who changed his name so that he could excel in the business world during a time when anti-Semitism was at a high mark. And his son takes this very personally.
Yep.
Because after Mr. E disappears, they change their name back to Goldstein.
Yep.
And end up having a lot of hardship for that. So he's like, yeah, you used a fake name to get ahead in the business world. You used a secret identity to fight crime. Like, you were so ashamed of your Jewish heritage. And it disgusted me, and you disgust me.
Yeah, he's Jewish and proud, and he feels like he's earned that. And his dad is like a direct...
This is a Jewish house, a proud Jewish house, and you don't belong here, his son says.
Yep.
Whew! Yeah.
I wrote poor Robbie and poor Jay. Like, this is one of the... I feel bad for his son. Yeah. Because obviously he's got a lot of anger, and that's not easy to carry. Yeah. But I also feel bad for him. Like...
Well, I don't know. Like, this was
ways,
almost the big question.
This is one of the ways that racism can infect things, can affect things differently. Obviously, Zorro over here had a lot of internalized self-hatred.
Yeah.
And it took form in him changing his name and hiding his identity and pushing all of his otherness behind him to try to get ahead.
And feeling like he had to.
Yes.
Because society would
destroy
him if he didn't.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. And a reaction to that comes in the form of his son, who wears his Jewishness as a badge of honor.
Because his mom gave it to him.
And
after his dad disappeared, his mom gave him back their Jewish heritage in a way.
And all of that suffering, though, has hardened that into I am who I am, and I will be proud of that. And because you couldn't be proud of that, you don't fucking belong here anymore.
Yeah. One of the things I think the 12 does really well is these... just a couple pages where they do flesh out the other members of the 12. Most of them. Sorry, Black Widow. Most of them have good stories. Like, this was a very interesting, wrench. And this is on top of his son already has the very typical, you abandoned us.
To go be a good place.
Yeah, so that bitterness was already there.
Yes.
Add on top of it, all the suffering that he had for embracing his Jewish heritage. Feeling like he had to because it was like a gift his mother gave him, and now she's a struggling single mother.
Yep.
So not even feeling like he ever had the choice. Like, he is a proud Jewish man now, but I'm sure there was a time when he was getting bullied in 7th grade when he was like, I didn't have a say in this. Like, maybe I would have liked to have been like my dad and not had this advertised. But I was not given that choice. So there's so many levels to the bitterness here. And it's very good character development. And it's exactly... I didn't see any of this coming. So we have another scene of one of our characters just on their knees crying. That is a reoccurring theme.
It is something that happens a lot.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm sorry, Laura. I'm so sorry. God help me. I'm so sorry. And he's just crying. And we cut away from that because, man, you don't want to stick around. That's heartbreaking.
They need a moment of privacy anyway.
Yeah. Let's leave them to their grief.
So this panel, I wrote down, Claire's unimpressed face gives me life. Like this right here. Because dude asked
I thought that joke was funny. I'm sorry.
I was not... He tells a joke... and it doesn't hit, and this face she makes, I
have seen this face so often. As a person who tells many jokes that do not hit, I've seen this face. People, it is a look of disgust.
Yep, I love her.
Yeah.
And this is what, I think I liked Claire a lot, And so the way her story goes down makes me angry because I actually like her and I want better for her.
Yeah. So I'm going to tell the joke here so that our audience can judge whether it's funny or not. He's telling a joke about somebody comes down, a son comes back from the war, and he's talking to his father. And he's like, Dad, what's been happening? His dad's like, oh, the cat's dead. And the son is like, you can't just tell me the cat's dead out of the blue like that. You start with the cat's on the roof, we can't get him down, and you work your way to the truth. Oh, I'm sorry, it's his brother, not his father. And his brother says, you're right, I'm sorry, never mind. And then the guy says, okay, brother, how's Mom doing? And he says, well, Mom's on the roof and we can't get her down. See, I'm still laughing. That's comedy. Their mom's dead. Get it? No? Okay. That's fine. Not for everyone. A little bit of dark humor there.
I appreciate a good gallows humor as much as the next girl.
Well, I'm sorry. That one worked for me.
I am Claire in this.
Mom's on the roof. We can't get her down.
Anyways,
they are
forward.
interrupted by...
Thank God.
Someone from the Daily Bugle.
Watching this dude try to
Spider-Man's
flirt.
comic.
Watching this dude try to flirt is pain on many different levels.
Yeah, straight out of the Spider-Man universe, we get the Daily Bugle, which I thought was a fun little nod to the rest of the Marvel universe. A lot of this, they are separated from the rest of the Marvel universe. So whenever it kind of just little bits where it pokes his head in are fun. Offers the Phantom a job. He's like, hey, Phantom reporter, you're a reporter.
Yep.
And we would like kind of a column piece about life from your perspective. Because you are Captain America, except also a reporter. So report. And he's like, yeah, I need a job. I'm directionless around here. So a job he gives him.
And then here he starts planning his future life with a chick who has given him no indication that she would like to have one with him.
Yeah. He's got some he's doing some wishful thinking here that, like, I'll really impress her with this Daily Bugle gig.
Maybe we can plan a life together.
Yeah.
The girl who has only not laughed at my jokes and disdainfully told me that you can follow if you want, I guess.
That's just how we start. Start from a place of hate and grow to a place of love.
That's not even hate. It's indifference.
It's harder. It's harder to come back from indifference.
Hate at least requires some emotional input.
That is fair.
She doesn't care about him. He is building a life with her in his head.
He is. Honestly, like, there's no one else for this guy. Because he is... It's funny because I wonder, too, if this was a 1940s mindset where the philosophy was you fell in love with your high school sweetheart, you got married, you had 2.5 children, blah, 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 blah. The idea that the first girl you meet that you are at all attracted to, you're like, well, if I'm going to have sex with that girl, obviously we have to get married so that God doesn't hate it. And so you start idolizing this girl and putting her on a pedestal because you are trying to, in your mind,
make the fact that you want to have sex okay.
Yeah. You're trying to fit into that societal mold of like, yes, I want to... I must want to have a pure romance
because I want to fuck you.
I want to have missionary sex under the covers as God intended, and they can't because we aren't wed.
This is so painful.
It's true. So to leave that, let's cut to a drunk laughing man who is our
first confessional.
Well, our second because the Phantom.
Well,
when they drop it off, our Phantom's talking about like. How we're two old relics. Yeah. So now we have a laughing man who is drunk. And I like this character just because he's kind of a Joker Two-Face mashup.
Yeah.
Because he's sort of a district attorney that when his men get off, he goes and kills them or at least subdues them as the laughing man. Mm-hmm. And he has a weird sense of humor and he wears a laughing man mask. As he is drunkenly yelling at this robot, he's talking about, like, you're the one heading for the scrap heap, pal. Not me. Not tonight. Not ever. I'm out of here. So he goes off to drunkenly fight crime, I assume.
We're all making good choices.
Yeah, we're all adjusting to this brave new world very well. So then we cut to the fiery mask, not flame mask. And he's in a bar that he used to go to way back when.
Yep.
And
digging up the old haunts.
Yeah, and people are like, "Oh,
how'd you get your powers, man?"
Well, first they're like, "Are you in the wrong bar?" Because he's by him and the witness both came to this bar together to get a drink, and they look very out of place. They are the only white guys. They're both in like business suits.
Yeah.
But
they stay and drink.
Yeah, and he, apropos of nothing, tells his origin story. And let me tell you, there was a weird thing about zombies, Nazi zombies, in the Golden Age. And his origin story is straight out of one of these Golden Age comics, where he's like, oh, there were Nazi zombies, and then there was this 20-foot tall mad scientist. He was the master of the zombies. He called himself the Zombie Master.
The name. Look, we realized later that this story is fake. Yeah. But even before that, this was not... Fiery Man is not a storyteller.
This is definitely harpooning the old stories and how ridiculous they were. Also, I will say this 20-foot tall doctor definitely has the evil, mystical Asian racial stereotype going.
That's fair.
Like
That's
he's definitely got the Fu Manchu and the extra long nails, which was a thing. Detective Comics #1. This was before Batman even appeared in the comics. Was this villain called the Claw, who was like a skeleton man with long nails and the Asian racist Asian eyes, and this is that. He is definitely, this villain he has created is definitely a Golden Age Japanese Nazi, Japanese World War II racial stereotype.
Play to your strengths.
And, as you would expect, nobody buys this fucking story.
It's a bad story.
It is a dumb story. In the story, basically, they're shooting him with a laser to turn him into a zombie. He has powerful will, unlike the poor homeless people, because, if you don't pull yourself up by your bootstraps, it's because you deserve it. And it blows up the machine, blows up the Asian scientist, but he ends up with superpowers. And everyone, this is a mostly African-American crowd in this bar, and they are kind of like crowded around him like,
this is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard.
They are not buying this shit. And then they talk to the other guy, and he's like, I do not speak often, but I see all, for I am the witness. And this is how the witness talks all the time, and I am here for it because it's fucking hilarious. Because I imagine people in real conversations trying to do that. They walk outside, and a guy does a drive-by shooting at him. But all of a sudden, this fiery wall appears, stopping the car. And the guy in the flame mask is like, I always find that a little fire really helps to illuminate the truth, don't you? Which, I don't think it makes his story more believable, but it does prove that he has superpowers.
Yes.
So,
in all honesty, he's doing better than Dynamic Man.
Boy howdy. Not that that's a tall order, but yeah,
look,
he really
the bar's
is.
On the ground.
Yeah, on the fucking ground. Then we cut to the Blue Blade, who's excited because he's got an agent, and he's going to be famous in Hollywood. Mr. E comes back in, and Mr. E basically tells a lie. Says oh, they wanted me to stay, but they've got their own life. I didn't want to interfere, blah, 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 blah. I'm going to stay here. And I will give our boy, the Blue Blade, a little credit. He kind of taps him on the shoulder and is like, absolutely, well done, my friend. Welcome back. We're glad to have you back.
Yep.
So, a little camaraderie there. Meanwhile, the Phantom Reporter's just looking out the window, and his not even close to girlfriend flies by with blood red eyes, and he's wondering, oh yeah, she doesn't sleep, so what is she out there doing at all hours of the night? Turns out that is a fair question, because what she is doing is straight up murdering folks.
I'm fine with it.
We get a scene of her killing the fuck out of a guy named Simon Dexter, who sold his soul to demons and somehow had found ways to not pay back the debt of his soul. And that's what she does. She shows up and says, hey, that's long overdue. We're here to collect the debt. And just murders him. Just guts him like a little fish. Goodbye, artist guy we don't know. Issue 4, we are opening on our boy, the Laughing Mask. Twin Automatics Bark, the Laughing Mask. Gangland's nemesis, the law's laughter assassin, a blood-curdling thriller. And it is indeed. So, our boy, Phantom Reporter is sad because the family's breaking up.
Yep. Mr.
Mastermind, who, because he is able to predict things, put a bunch of money in an offshore account. Now he's like a zillionaire. He's like, oh yeah, I bought myself a solid lead house out in the woods. I'm going to go live there.
We get a nice gratuitous shot of a naked Black Widow.
Yeah.
She sleeps naked and he peeps in the door like a creeper.
Knocks in the door to ask if she wants lunch and sees that she is disclosed and lingers a little longer than I'm comfortable with before shutting the door back.
Yep.
Like this, there could have been a scene of him quickly shutting the door. There's not a scene of that. There's a scene of him gawking.
Staring. Because she sleeps naked, and apparently that's licensed to do whatever you like.
Yep.
I don't like him. I don't know if I made this clear.
Understood.
I don't like him.
Then the police show up, and they're like, hey, Laughing Man, you stopped a robbery, and that's cool, but we need to register your guns and get some details about what happened. Because the government has given you guys carte blanche in your crime fighting to go fight crime. But we're curious about
what you doing,
and we'd like to register your guns so that when, those bullets show up in people's bodies, we know who did it. And he's like, oh, that's fine. I used to be a DA. Totally cool. I'll go get my guns. While the police are there, they mention to the Phantom Reporter that there was another murder that they're a little confused about. There's an art gallery that's just filled with gore. When we went out there, it was, well, I've never seen anything like it before. And there's a picture of the two cops and just
blood everywhere.
And the head is just kind of rolling across the floor.
Like a tumbleweed.
Yeah. Like a little artist head tumbleweed flowing across. Woo, yeah.
Which I will give the Phantom Reporter a handful, like just a second of credit where he automatically thinks maybe Black Widow's got something to do with that.
Oh, he immediately suspects, yeah.
I'll give him just that one notion of credit because he deserves it.
But then immediately take it away because he does not turn her in.
Nope.
And it's not because he's ACAB, it's because he still wants to have sex with her.
Hey, blackmail will get you sex too, I suppose.
Fingers crossed. Meanwhile, down in the basement...
He's got to hope for something, because she's not actually genuinely attractive
She has not bit any of the bait he's put out so far.
But in the basement...
In the basement, the Blue Blade is trying to recruit a co-star for his show he's going to make. And he goes to Rockman. And he's just sitting on a rocking horse that's down there, which is very funny, because you get this guy dressed like a musketeer in short shorts and a male adult diaper, I guess? Which was pantaloon shorts, which were the style at the time.
It was never the style.
The 1700s French Revolution.
While he was alive.
Accurate. Accurate. But he's talking to Rockman, and he's like, yeah, tell me your origin story, and we'll work it into the show. Because he's already decided that Rockman's going to be his co-star.
He wants a Beauty and the Beast
Yeah,
thing.
Beauty and the...
Unfortunately for him, he's not a beauty, so I don't know who he's going to get to do that part.
Oh, he thinks he's good looking. You can tell by how few clothes he wears. So, Rockman tells his origin story. That is that he was a member of a great kingdom with his daughter and his wife. And then one day, the Nazis invaded with a weird Nazi drill. Because Nazis were doing all sorts of crazy shit during World War II. Which, if you actually look, the Nazis were doing all sorts of crazy shit during World War II. I don't know how many underground communities they drilled into. But so this Morlock race of dudes and the Rockman race of dudes all got in a big war. And he ends up chasing the main Nazi guy that's pursuing him. And there's a line here. It says, I tried to reach him to stop him, but he was, as always, just beyond my reach. I took that to be a note about how in the 40s you had all these comics with all these nigh unstoppable superheroes fighting Nazis, right? Mm-hmm. But they couldn't ever win the war because the war hadn't been won yet. Yeah. So a lot of times Captain America, later on Batman, Superman, like these people would be fighting the Nazis. They would get to Hitler and they would have to have some contrivance for him getting away because if the war actually did have these superheroes in it, like, we would have already stopped Hitler. So you have to come up with much like in a children's cartoon, like, you have to have Team Rocket get away at the end of every Pokemon episode so they can show up again. So Rockman is talking about how that is what happened. Every time he's, like, almost ready to capture the main bad guy, he just gets away. That's why the Red Skull was invented, to be Captain America's nemesis. So you could have someone Captain America could actually capture and pursue. Same with Baron Blood, Baron Zemo, Baron Hydra.
I do think it's one of the things that's interesting about what they do here, though. Speaking of that, is that they make a point, and the fandom makes a point, especially to mention that, like, although they're the superheroes with the superpowers running in front of all of the stuff, the real heroes are the regular people. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's amen, brother. Like, I think it's I think it's one of the reasons I'm a Batman guy more than the Superman guy. Like, it's much more heroic to go into these situations when you don't have superpowers, when there is a very real chance of you dying. But the Blue Blade listens to that heartbreaking story of how he lost his wife is separated from his wife and daughter by this avalanche, and how he couldn't get back to them. So he just wants to go home. He went to the surface to try and make a name for himself in hopes that his people would hear about it and come for him.
I want him to get to go home.
Me too.
I want that so bad for him, because he just loves his family.
And they will come someday. Home. My princess will find me. We will once more be a family, and I will be happy again, because I will be home. And the Blue Blade listens to it, and he's like, no, that story's not going to work. Sorry. I'm going to pick someone else to be my co-star. I'm out. And I wrote here that Blue Blade would definitely pay $8 for a check mark on Twitter.
Fucking right. Like, he is such an irritating little bitch, I swear.
Sorry to have troubled you. He is such a one-track mind guy. So they have a party because Mastermind's leaving. Everyone shows up, including Dynamic Man, who shows up to just be a total asshole.
He is such an asshole.
But he also brings in Electro. He's like, look, if you're having a party, all 12 of us have to be here. And he rolls the robot in, which is very funny. Once again, a Phantom reporter gives himself a little bit of redemption here, because he gets right in Dynamic Man's face about Dynamic Man talking about this brave new world and the perfect society he's trying to build. And he says, and wasn't that just the kind we were fighting when we went into all this in the first place? The perfect master race, der Ubermensch. And then he does the Zig Heil with the Hitler mustache. And Dynamic Man almost knocks his head into next week. But gets stopped by the Miracle Man, Mr. Wonderful, who grabs his arm and is like, no. Captain Wonder saves him. And this is the thing I do respect about Fan Reporter. He is fearless. Much to a fault sometimes, but he is fucking fearless for what he believes in. And he has no problem telling Dynamic Man where he can fucking go. We aren't
at this point yet, but even at this point, I had no trouble believing that Dynamic Man would be very sympathetic to Nazi ideals.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, he's already revealed a lot of his problems.
And then he ruins whatever redemption arc he could have had by pointing out, he asks basically,
he finally asks Black Widow on a straight up date, and she says, you know nothing about me, and if you're smart, you'll keep it that way.
Yeah.
And I think that would have been a very interesting way to have this resolved. Like,
well, he makes the point of, like, any other woman would have been impressed by that, you know?
Yeah.
And
here's the thing,
was that for my benefit then, or because you've had a few drinks? You've had a few drinks too many.
He's like, hey, column A, column B, a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I do like the idea that he's like, okay, I definitely almost got murdered. Let me see if I can get anything out of this, because I did almost die. I realize now
you would have.
That was stupid.
Yeah.
And Laughing Mask behind him does the whole, that went well. And he's like, shut up.
See, if he had respected her wishes here and just left her alone, I'd have had a lot more respect for him. But then after this, because she's clearly said she's not interested.
She invited him in. And here's why I say that. She says, if you're smart.
So we're just admitting he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Then. Okay.
He is not smart. She basically said, if you are the exact opposite of what you are and what I know you to be, you'll do this. And it's like, okay, well, I am the exact opposite of that, so I'm going to do the other thing. I think she should have worked on her phrase in there. She could have nipped this in the bud right here.
She tried.
She did try. And,
so,
meanwhile, the Blue Blade is stroking Electro lovingly, thinking, maybe this can be my co-star.
Yep.
Someone who will never upstage me because I control him.
Is that why he didn't want... Because I feel like Rockman is much more interesting as a person than the Blue Blade is.
And maybe that's the problem.
He actually has a nice, solid backstory.
When Rockman tells his story, there is a scene of Blue Blade thinking about it and then going, no, that's not going to work. I wonder if while he was thinking about it, he was like, oh, no, that's way too good.
Yeah.
That guy's going to get all my press.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, then Electro, I can give Electro any backstory I want. He's
literally
just a robot wall.
Yeah. A blank slate.
Then we have a very touching scene where Mr. E finally admits he is Jewish. For the first time ever. And he does it to the witness. And the witness is like, yeah, so am I. Like, you and me. Jews in a pod, I guess.
Which really does make, the fact that this dude went to Auschwitz.
Yeah.
And is Jewish and saw what they were doing.
Yeah. As if it was not fucking with him.
Yeah. That whole thing is entirely,
Yeah. So, we see, Mastermind go to his new lead mansion to live his life out in the sticks. He said anyone's welcome to visit. Well, almost anyone. Picture a dynamic man. So apparently Mastermind was like, you don't bother. Don't bother.
I don't want you here.
And Black Widow ends up just disappearing. We see her at a punk goth club picking up gals and taking names.
I wanted her to have a goth girlfriend.
Yeah.
So bad.
I think she does technically sort of get one.
For a minute.
And so he types up his first article about how hard it is to be a superhero in modern time. Exactly what you'd expect it to be. It was fine. But that's how this issue ends, is with you actually get the Daily Bugle page.
Yep. He does a job.
He does his job.
He's adjusting.
Yeah.
Slowly.
He's getting by. And then, issue 5, we get the witness. And there's a very nice scene of him in the excuse me.
Bless you.
A very nice scene of him in a diner.
This poor waitress.
She says, I hope you don't mind me saying so, but you look like a man waiting for someone or something. And he says, I am. I'm waiting for justice. And I always imagine him with that gruff Kevin Conroy Batman voice.
Yeah. No, he fits the mold.
R.I.P. Kevin Conroy. Yes, he's got that very dark voice of everything he says is melodramatic as fuck.
The way they have his words written lends itself to that.
Yeah.
Because imagine like Gilbert Godfrey, I am waiting for justice in a weird.
Yeah.
I swear.
So, meanwhile, it's very funny too, because he's getting ready to tell his origin story, because she's talking to him because there's no one else in the diner.
Yeah. It's the middle of the night.
Making conversation, trying to get a tip, trying to flirt. I don't know. It's never established. But she asks his origin story, and right when he's starting to tell it, she's like, ooh, wait, I want to see this, and goes to the TV.
Where Dynamic Man is.
Story of Dynamic Man still...
busting everything down, doing the Lord's work.
Then we cut back to him, and we get the story.
Oh, I actually wrote down here. So, they're interviewing Dynamic Man, and he's talking about, the reporter asks if he ever worked with J. Edgar Hoover, and he says, yes, I did. He was a good director and good for the agency, a man's man. And I wrote down, Hoover was at the very least bi, so this is funny to me.
Well, she even
says... And then she,
he used to dress up as a woman in his off hours.
Yep.
I know he was kind of frozen asleep for 60 years, but do a little research before you open up your mouth like that.
Yeah. He was a man's man.
He was a man's man.
Who liked to wear dresses.
As I knew, because I wasn't paying attention. So he ends up being a cop who shoots the wrong person, goes to jail for 2 years, gets out, decides to kill himself, doesn't get to because the angels take him up to heaven and say, "But a voice spoke to me and said that I would be given another chance. I would be sent back to earth and given a task by which I might save my immortal soul, to separate out the good from the evil, and I had failed to do before my death. I'm shown a glimpse of something terrible that is going to happen before it happens. I have time, a few days, sometimes more, to find out if the person it is going to happen to deserves it or not." So
like I said, I want his power.
He becomes the judge, jury, and executioner of these people. If he does not deserve it, I must do all I can to stop it from happening. If he does, I let it happen, and that's great. And she's like, that's wild.
Again, this waitress is totally done with the crazies. Like, she's just, give me money and leave.
Yeah, and then she's like, oh, here comes one of the regulars. And he's like, oh, is he a good man? She's like, Mr. Flint? Yeah, he's a very nice old guy, also a good tipper. And then he basically says, I imagine he was not as nice when he was a prison guard at Auschwitz. We already know the witness has some feelings about Auschwitz.
As you fucking should.
So he straight up distracts him in the road.
When did he have time to change his clothes?
And he does the Superman phone booth change where it's like almost instantaneous. Yeah, and the next scene he's wearing the outfit. And the old man, he calls him by his real name, not the cover name he took so he could come to America and keep Naziing. And he straight up says, I wish to see only what I have already seen. I like that. That's a good line. And the guy's looking towards him, and then the bus comes out of nowhere and splats him. So the witness, doing the Lord's work, taking care of Nazis.
Again, I don't think that this is the worst power.
Yeah. And then we cut back, and Dynamic Man is trying to spur the other people to action. Mm-hmm. He's like, look, I'm out there doing hero shit, and you all are just fucking off here at this house that the government's paying for. He asked the witness, what did you do last night? And the witness says, me? Oh, I went for a walk downtown.
Sightseeing?
Something like that. Yeah. So then, as we know, Captain Wonder, my neck started hurting. Captain Wonder is still mourning his wife and 2 kids.
Yep.
And Dynamic Man kind of gets in his face about it and like, look, you are one of the people who has great power. And basically steals that line from Spider-Man. Like, come on, like, great power, great responsibility, get out there.
And obviously, this is the wrong thing to say to a man who just lost his whole family.
Literally says, throwing a pity party, are we? And then you have the Phantom Reporter going, uh-oh, like he knows what's going to happen, like, before it happens. Because then one thing you say about the Phantom Reporter, he's a reporter. He's like, he's on the beat. He's like, I see what's getting ready to happen here. And sure enough, there is a bit of fisticuffs here between these two. And it is stopped by the Fiery Mask, who's like, you know what? Whether you're going to hero like Dynamic Man or do your own thing, we've kind of got a reputation to uphold. We're supposed to be better than this petty infighting. And Dynamic Man is like, fine, whatever. I have better things to do with my time. Important things. Enjoy your pity party. And he flies off. Then we have a woman show up. That's right. There's a second female character in this comic. And I like her. She's
it only
neat.
took third.
There's no, again, trade paperbacks. Do me a favor and put page numbers in your fucking comics. You're killing me, Smalls. So she shows up to the army and she's like, hey, my father is the guy that made Electro.
Yep.
I have all the copyright stuff here and I want him back.
And the government is like, yes, of course, all of this intellectual property that you clearly own.
Absolutely.
That
just
you
get
have
your
all
lawyers.
The paperwork for.
Get your lawyers. And we'll talk about it in court.
In court.
Yeah. And she's like, well, it's obviously mine. And you're just...
He's not doing anything.
Don't you have him in a garden shed or a mansion property? Like, he's like, yeah, but there's some tech in there we want to reverse engineer and start putting in, our killing machines to make them better. She's like, I hate that idea. I'll see you in court.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we go to the audition of the Blue Blade. Whew, and it goes horribly. It is really like some 1920s It would have been old-fashioned in the 40s when he was alive.
Yeah. We got a nice variety show. Clearly, like, He's got his nice sexist jokes.
Yeah,
and...
he's doing the whole like, oh, hey, basically Rodney Dangerfield's take my wife, please. Hey, yeah, she's trying to kill me. Hey. And for some reason, I'm still not really clear on this. I guess it might be just that agents are always supposed to build you up. But the agent basically begs for them to give him a pilot. And they're like, okay, we'll give him 6 episodes. We're canceling it on episode 3 if you don't have any ratings. I'll eat the cost of the rest. But then the agent comes to the Blue Blaze like, oh, they loved it, man. You were great. I'm like, wonderful. Why would you not tell him all the places where work were needed? But that's how some agents operate, I suppose. Then we have another scene that I actually kind of like.
This one was really good.
Yeah, where our boy... Captain Wonder. I can't remember Captain Wonder's name. I keep wanting to call him Mr. Wonderful. Captain Wonder.
There's a line here with the Blue Blade real quick where he says retro is new.
Yeah.
And like the irony.
Yeah. Next
Words don't
page,
mean things.
we get to see how new retro isn't.
Right.
Yeah. Our boy is here.
Mr. Wonderful.
Mr. Wonderful. Who, like I say, I will never remember his name. Mr. Wonderful Captain Wonder is talking to kids in what you assume is like an inner city school. Yep. He's saying,
giving that nice little spiel about like,
yeah,
if you just apply yourself, the world is yours.
Yeah.
Basically. And
they talk about how that's not realistic. Where the neighborhood they're from. Yeah. And it's it's sad. It kind of breaks your heart because you see these ideals when met with the cold reality of, in this case, 2008, and how hard it is to fit your worldview in with what's actually going on. And there's different ways to handle when you're presented with new information like that. You either process it and change your worldview, or you double down. And we have an example of someone doubling down, Dynamic Man, who shows up to basically give him his this is what I was trying to tell you, man. Like, when I gave you that speech about the pity party, I wasn't trying to be shitty, which he was. He was. But his scapegoat here is that he wasn't. He's like, the reason I stay above it all is because this isn't the world I wanted. This is the world my father wanted when he made me. This is garbage. This sucks. The reason I'm only here, like, on Earth for seconds at a time is because I can't stand the stink. I can't stand the smell of this world. And I'm like, whew. Ooh, okay.
I thought for a minute we were going to try to make Kurt deep here, and I was like, this is not, I didn't want,
no.
Don't try to redeem him. Just let him be shit. And they do, because that was a failed mission.
Our world is dead, Professor Jordan. The United States we fought for no longer exist. Now, is there any 2023 real world correlations where you have heard this exact rhetoric? No longer exist. The best we can do is just keep busy and hope that maybe someday the future catches up with us again. And that's why I pushed you. If you keep busy enough, if we all keep busy enough, none of this will have to think about that. Just put on the suit and get to work. So he's trying to do like a tough love thing. And I like this. Fucking Wonder Man's like, fly away.
Go away.
Yeah, Captain Wonder says, fly away. Like, if you don't, I'm going to hit you again.
No, this notion, I actually do think this is a really good scene.
Yeah.
It draws in, one, I don't think that the ideals that they pretend, like the 1940s and 50s and all that shit, I don't think they were ever real. Like, it was always a story that upper middle class and middle class white people got to tell themselves. They
were real in white middle America because you couldn't see past your own neighborhood.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah,
they were
exactly.
not this
like the stories he's hearing
about
the troubles in the poorer parts of the big city.
Yeah. That would have been the same.
If he had went in the 1940s, yes. Yeah, you're exactly right.
That was the only point I wanted to make. Because I do think that's a really good illustration of the fact that those ideals were only ever a nice fairy tale that some people told themselves.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Then we cut to Laughing Man who's talking. I like he's talking to Phantom Reporter like, you and me should team up. I'll get you a sad mask. We can do like, the theater, comedy and drama. You could change your name to something dour because you're always sad, except for, the 10 seconds you talk to Black Widow before she shoots you down. Then you're happy, and then you're sad again. So you just keep being sad, and we could do like a thing, because we don't have powers, and none of the powered people are going to team up with him. So he's basically telling him, like, you're my last choice, but... I figured out a way. Work. Yeah, I figured out a way to make this work.
He's blue blading it pretty good.
Yeah, he really is. And he talks about how some people are finding their way through and some people are not. And then the police come in and arrest him before that can even go anywhere. So before Phantom Reporter can even decide whether that's a thing he wants to do, Laughing Mask, also known as Dennis Burton, since you accused me of not using people's real names ever, just none of them have interesting names except Black Widow. Yeah, Dennis Burton is arrested because his bullet was used in a murder right before World War II started. And since there's no statute of limitations on murder, whoopsie! And even though Captain Wonders told Dynamic Man to fuck off, he's kind of taking his advice to heart. He's like, I'm going to go superhero and stop thinking about this because I can't seem to help underprivileged people. I can't stop thinking about my dead family. I'm just going to pour myself into work. This is what you see people do all the time to avoid dealing with crisis and tragedy, is they pour themselves into their work.
And I just have an unimportant side note here. Hairy legs are gross.
He is I tell you that our boy Chris Weston loves hairy legs.
It is so fucking nasty.
He does it a lot.
It distracted me. Like, he's going, like... Captain Wonderful over here is going through this whole existential crisis, and the only thing I could focus on is these nasty ass legs. Get rid of that. I don't need that. That is fucking disgusting.
You know what? Some people are okay. Some people like hairy legs.
Yeah. It ain't me.
Fair enough. I'm just saying,
Here's the thing. If Black Widow...
Don't yuck his yum, which is apparently wearing short shorts with hairy legs.
If Black Widow can't have body hair in her little skin tight onesie, this bitch should also not have body hair in his little skin tight onesie.
I will say this. I'm fine with Black Widow having body hair in her skin tight onesie. You got to take that up with Chris Weston, who loves hairy legs on the fellas. Chris.
Fix it, bitch.
Long time listener. Could you come back and
fix it?
Actually, to make both audiences happy, make one of his legs hairy and one not. Like, he got halfway done.
So gross.
He got halfway done and he had to go.
Well, we know how men like to act tough, but the moment you put that waxing strip on them, they scream like bitches. I want it. That's fine. He can have that backstory. God. I'm good with it.
Well, you can see he's got the tears in his eyes, so you wouldn't have to change too much. The tears are obviously because of his family, but you could make it because of the waxing job and just de-wax.
I'm just saying, it distracted me to a point where I was like, that is the only note I have for that. He has this whole big, beautiful existential crisis going on, and I'm like, if you don't do something about the fucking hair.
Them fucking hair legs.
Anyways.
Yeah, alright, so.
Laughing Man ain't laughing no more.
No! We open issue 6 with mysterious denizens of Subterranea, Rockman, underground secret agent. A startling story from the center of the earth. And it's a picture of Rockman in shadow, where you can just see like his fist beating on the ground, like he did when he was trying to contact his family. That's probably my favorite panel. Like, I really love this, even though it's a cover, technically. In a trade paperback, it ends up just being a panel, because it's just a page of the comic. But it's my favorite. I love that picture of Rockman. Because the only light is from... he's got like a mining light helmet on. And, it's good. I dig it. But you are correct, Cecilia. We open on Laughing Man getting booked and put into prison. And they say, we might need to give him more security because these are the kids of some of the people that he put in prison so long ago.
I was so happy here for a few panels because I thought that Claire got to be a goth lesbian.
We cut back to the goth club and one of the girls is talking to one of the other girls and saying... Hey, I see that girl, that blonde you're hanging out with later. Isn't she a little old for you? And, it's not like that. I mean, it's funny. You should be, right? But you're not. It's as if, you should be right. Like, you should be right. She's too old for me. But no. As if we came here and we dress like this because we're playing a role. Like, we're still playing dress up. But with Claire, it's like this is her world, you know? Like, it was her world before we discovered it. We play at this, she lives it. Which I guess is technically true, because she's possessed by a demon.
Yeah, and she made a deal with the devil.
Yeah. So she's like, hey, I'm going to do my midnight thing. Because she always extracts her revenge at midnight, exactly. It's
the witching hour.
It's artistic rights of the witching hour. And interestingly enough, she gives out the same warning to this girl that she gave to the Phantom Reporter. And I imagine if this girl had just did a little more stuck-to-itiveness, like the Phantom Reporter, this story might have ended up with these two together.
But she's touching her face, and she's much more
That's
interested.
why I say she's more interested in this girl. So, if this girl had not taken no for an answer, we could have got this happy ending instead of the not one that we ended up with.
I'm just saying. Maybe it's also because I did actually get my hopes up that, like, they were gonna do, like, a goth lesbian thing with her as opposed to, like, having her fall into the trope of the dude's reward at the end. And so, like, I was really happy here for a few panels that, like, because she's clearly, like, interested. She's touching the faces. Yeah. Like, she's in an environment she enjoys being in, or at least feels comfortable in.
I think it feels comfortable in.
And, like, so, like, I've got this hope that, like, they're going to do this with her. They're going to, like, make her a goth lesbian and have her have a girlfriend. And then we cut back to Phantom Reporter and... Yeah,
and he's looking at the old suit thinking, maybe I need to dress up like a superhero some more. Like, I've got writer's block. I don't know why. Maybe getting back in the old costume will help.
Yep.
And before he gets a phone call, and it's Mastermind, who's like, hey, I'm in my lead house.
Finally, it's quiet again.
Yeah, I'm starting to get these images, and I need to tell you, I'm feeling the flow of time again. And something is very, very wrong, Richard. Something's going to happen, something terrible. So, as usual, you have your oracle that is completely useless.
Yep.
Like something
vague and unhelpful.
Something terrible is already going to happen. If you read the first 4, something terrible already has happened to almost every character here.
You know,
that's like saying that I think the sun might come out tomorrow. Like, thanks, Mastermind, you've earned your title. Then we cut to a bar where you've got Dynamic Man fighting a big cyborg robot, this is definitely a fucking golden age, ridiculously shaped robot who somehow made it to 2008. And Dynamic Man says it's one of his goals to take out this gang who uses tech to make, like, war robots to rob banks and shit.
We got our Gundam Wing machine.
Yeah, you got a little Gundam here. And you kind of have the question of why is he specifically angry at these robot people?
I didn't even clock that.
Yeah, they remind me of Electro. Like, why is he picked them specifically out for... Mm. I would have think he would have picked, like, you know, the Cribs and the Bloods and, you know, the Latin Kings. You know, show his racism card a little more. But he ends up fighting this thing and defeating it, of course. And people cheer for him and they invite him back to the bar for a drink. And he's like, well, alcohol doesn't do anything for me. And they're like, well, fuck, we'll give you an apple juice, man. Come hang out. And he's like, all right. And this is kind of a change for him, because the last scene we just had him talking about how he didn't want anything to do with fucking people. And now he's like, God damn, you know what? I'm gonna try this hanging out with the lowly serfs and see if I can't make this work. Captain Wonder, meanwhile, is much more the hero that I would like to see. He comes in, he does the job, he leaves without doing interviews. He's
not there for the press.
He seems much less anti-LGBT and racist. Like, he's more
Captain America, less...
Yeah. But they also say that he seems to take no pleasure in his successes.
Yep. He's depressed.
And he also seems to be working constantly.
He's depressed and exhausted.
Yeah, they mention, when does this guy sleep? And he never smiles. And then this dude gets a little... You know how baseball players will slap each other's butts, like, in the dugout? Well, Dynamic Man doesn't. Even though that's America's pastime.
Racist and homophobic, Dynamic Man really lives up to the name.
Yes, he's a man of dynamic nature. He does all the tropes, the evil tropes. And dude slaps his ass.
And he handles it poorly.
Yes, and he says, this should have stopped a long time ago. And you're not super clear what he means.
Oh, you're fucking clear.
Well, I mean, like, does he mean ass slapping or the gay agenda? Like, specifically, I guess you do know what he means, but you don't know what he's going to do about it, is what I should say.
Yes.
Like,
that's fair.
It's very worrisome. Also, I wrote that he flew off in a very Sieg Heil manner. Whenever he flies, he's got the right fist drawn in and the left fist up in the
he's got his
fucking
hand up.
the
Yeah,
salute.
you're right.
Every time he takes off, they did that. And I know that was not accidental.
So I wrote down ahead of time, this bit with Rockman is going to make me sad, isn't it?
Oh,
and it does.
God,
it breaks
it
my
does.
fucking heart.
Yes, and we also get a great pro-union message.
We do get a great pro-union message.
I say, for all that we complain about the 12, they do some things right, and this is one of them.
This is one of them.
And we get the this little mining town.
Yep. Think West Virginia, basically.
Yeah, that's trying to unionize. And they're like, oh, this guy, he's kind of a John Henry type. He's like 8 feet wide and 7 feet tall. He's a big buff dude. And he was kind of the mascot for this union operation. Like, everyone liked him, trusted him.
He's part of his community.
Beautiful wife, beautiful daughter, who he's like, I'm doing it all for them. Like, real family man.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
He is genuinely like, he looks out for his workers.
Yeah.
He's got, like, this, like, he really cares.
Yeah, he's a caring, good dude. And unfortunately, Boss Cleet, who is a company man end to end, through and through, decides one day that he's going to send some men down there and send our boy, I gotta get his real name here real quick. I have reason to believe that he's my grand uncle. Daniel Rose was his real name. So the foreman, the company man, is like, I'm going to send some guys down to basically straight up kill Daniel in the mine tunnels.
Can't have a union.
Yeah.
People want to get paid and have weekends off and health care.
This is a mining town, bro. This is not a union town. So he goes down, but he takes some of his boys with him because he gets word that this is going to go down. So he takes some loyalists with him, and they end up having a big fucking brawl. And as you would expect from Daniel Rose, the rock man himself, he starts laying waste to folks. And the foreman's like, fuck, boss Clay has to run.
Yep.
And Rockman goes chasing after him. And Daniel's just getting ready to catch him. But he set up some dynamite, the boss man did, because he was like, well, if this goes south, I gotta bury this and pretend it never happened.
Yep.
And pretend it was an accident. But since Boss Man Cleet, since upper management never knows how things actually work, the dynamite makes a way too strong explosion. Ends up bringing the whole mine down, not just the little section where the fight happened.
Yep.
And causes a sinkhole in the city.
Yep.
Like, he causes untold destruction, which I don't know if it says, but I hope kills him too. I assume the boss man also died, but I don't think it mentions it.
He never comes back up again,
yeah,
so I'm assuming so too.
If the vengeful God theory,
if there's any good in this,
if the Old Testament vengeful God thing has any reality to it, this guy gets buried too. But unfortunately, the sinkhole takes the town and takes his wife and daughter.
Yep.
And they say that they just see him walking around the ruins of this village, just beating the ground. And my heart breaks.
This is. I don't usually like the big, strong, brawny dudes with no brain, but this was fucking depressing.
It was so heartbreaking.
And, like, this was the worst possible outcome.
And the general kind of, she has a picture that she hands the general. She's like, so is this the guy? Is this the rock man? And the general's like, no resemblance. And she's like, walks out. And he's like, do you want the picture back? She's like, you can keep it or throw it out. I don't have any more use for it, except as a reminder of a tragedy and a dream that didn't work out. I was like, oh God, oh, it's sad.
It's fucking depressing.
Yeah.
It was heartbreaking.
But then she leaves, and his subordinate looks at it. He's like, I don't want to disagree with you, sir, but this looks like a goddamn dead ringer.
All due respect.
Yeah. And he's like, if it were you, and it were true, Lieutenant, would you want to know that you were never ever going to see your wife and child again? Or would you prefer to live the illusion, the dream, that someday, somehow, you would see them again? I do not have an answer for that question.
Here's the thing. On one hand, I do kind of think it's nicer to let him have his fantasy. On the other hand, he clearly still has family.
It's not working.
Well, that too, but he also clearly has other family.
Yeah.
And
you would think he might want to meet. And
who might want to meet him. And yes, you can never undo the damage and the heartbreak of losing your wife and your daughter. But it's not like he would be totally alone, pummeling the ground for something that will never happen.
He's not getting the comfort
that they are pretending.
Yeah. Well, this guy probably doesn't know that he goes in the basement and beats the floor every night. They have cameras in the mansion, but possibly not in the basement. If he does know, I kind of feel like, surprise, surprise, the general's being shitty to keep Rockman on the payroll. Like, he's like, look, there's a chance Rockman will go and be a hero again, as long as we don't tell him about this.
Which I feel like is the real motivation for not telling him.
I don't think the general's doing this out of a kindness, but he does have a nice kindness excuse already cooked up.
Ready. Yeah. It made me mad.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I kind of feel like the person who should get to decide that is Rockman.
Absolutely. Yeah. So. Yeah. But unfortunately, you can't. That's not a choice you can give him.
Well, it could be, hey, I guess.
And that's why it's tricky. Like, I don't think the general's motivation is pure, but I also do not know if it was the wrong choice. I kind of lean towards it. I try and lean towards truth where possible. And I feel like just telling Rockman the truth is probably the better thing. Because like I say, I don't think he's getting the comfort. But I don't know how he would react to that truth either.
I think if you could cushion the blow a little bit with being like, look...
We'll put him in a hospital. So it looks like it's the 1940s still. And we will slowly
cushion the blow is like, look, you know, you've got other
Your wife and daughter are on the roof and they won't come down. Oh, God, I deserve it.
Yes, you do.
She poked me. But it was worth it.
Oh, my God. I may still kick you. All right.
Yeah. So, we come back to Phantom Reporter, who is saying he can't ride, I can't fly, not super strong, I can't do what they do. But I know there has to be a place for me. Everybody's got a place in this world, so why not me? I know that I'm going to have to fight for it. And it shows Laughing Man, and he's got 2 black eyes. And he's saying, that's the best you got, pal? Bring it on. The Laughing Man spares no one. So obviously he's having a rough time in prison.
Not having fun with it.
Yeah. No matter what people think, no matter the odds, I'll do it in my own way, on my own terms. I'll show them all that the Phantom Reporter is back. Now, meanwhile, we're getting shots of Black Widow crying tears, maybe of blood, but tears nonetheless, in another room where she's committed one of these heinous murders. It's obviously taking a toll on her, even though she's killing quote-unquote bad people. And we also get a scene of the bar where
Dynamic Man
had the uncomfortable touch earlier. And all the people there getting murdered. Like, you just see the bar going tits up. Just blood and gore everywhere. And it's funny because the juxtaposition is with fucking Phantom Reporter putting on his costume like, yeah, I'm back. I'm going to do good. I'm going to be a hero. And it's very hilarious because, you know, he's so concerned with, like, getting his mojo back. Meanwhile, people are getting straight up murdered out there.
Right.
His supposed love interest is going through this horrible suffering. And he's just worried about, like, what can I do in my costume? Like,
I'm so out of time and out of place.
I'm out of time and it's hard.
Won't someone think about the poor, struggling white reporter?
Won't someone think about the children? And by the children, I mean me with my childlike mentality. So, Cecilia, if it's all the same to you, I'm going to call an audible and say that we stop there because we are at 2 hours and we are only halfway through this.
Yes.
So
this will be a 2-parter.
This is going to end up being a 2-parter. It is deceptively small as a trade paperback, but it is 13 issues.
I was gonna say also, I feel like for something that you have picked, a lot of the comics you've picked are more image heavy. Mm-hmm. This one is more word heavy. There's a lot of dialogue. Yeah. There's a lot of exposition,
and that's something that Michael Straczynski, he's a big dialogue fan, and when we do Rising Stars, we'll see some of that, and we will eventually do Rising Stars. I picked this one as our Michael intro again because I want to talk about the golden age of comics, and I think this was a great way into that.
I agree completely.
Thank you, Cecilia. This is why, you posted a thing on Facebook about what people love about you, and I love how well you recognize my talent. That is probably the greatest thing that you do for me.
He's trying to get poked again.
Why can't I stop? Here's the
he
thing. I know you're going to
it.
say I hate it, but I secretly like it. I really don't like it. I just can't
You
stop.
say you hate it,
I do.
and then you do things that incur that punishment.
You know what this feels like, Cecilia? You say you wear it. You say you hate it, but you wear that dress. And I'm like, oh, Cecilia, don't. If I tell you I hate it, you need to take my word for it. I do hate it.
I believe that you hate it.
Here's the thing.
I also believe maybe you're a bit of a masochist, and you...
Accurate.
Maybe...
I can't push back on that even a little, and I want to, and I can't.
Yep. So maybe, this is some time for self-reflection, and instead of blaming me for the attitude that you clearly bring upon yourself...
I have an idea. I'm not going to do that.
You, much like Dynamic Man, will be impervious to introspection.
So I do have a big question, but we'll save it for part 2. We will say our big question for part 1 was the question the general asked. If it were you and you were true lieutenant, would you want to know that? Would you ever want to see your wife and child again? That'll be our big question for part 1. We've already answered it because I only had one big question because I didn't know this was going to be a 2-parter. But that'll be our big question for part 1 that we both answered. And in 4 weeks, we will have part 2. So if you haven't got the 12 yet, you got another month. You got almost a month to get a hold of it. And Cecilia, it is now time for you to tell us what the hell is going on in 2 weeks. What are we diving into?
Doing volumes 3 and 4 of the Inspector Kogomi manga.
Hoo-ha!
I will be doing that until we finish it. So we got 3 and 4 for next week, and then 5 and 6 for after that. After we finish,
and maybe by then I will have watched some of Psychopaths, and I will be better informed.
Maybe I'll remember to actually bring the first.
Yeah, we tried to do this once, and Cecilia brought the case, and every disc was in it except disc 1.
Yep,
which arguably the one we needed
was the one we needed. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's all for the 12.
For this time.
For this time. Yeah, that's all of the 12 for now. All the links will be in the show notes. Also, as usual, Judgmental Horror Junkies, great other podcast I do with Gorship. In the show notes, got a Twitch show that we do on Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. In the show notes, got all the social medias in the show notes. Like, leave reviews, follow, blah, 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 blah. We also got a Patreon now. So, if you're interested in that, in the show notes, I will have links, all the things. Yeah, is that it?
Be your own ally.
Be your own ally. Because Captain Dynamo's not going to do it for you.
No.